And we'll have to Housewife. I apologize, it's kind of delay, but so jumping right into this, so friends, if you guys could keep church in your prayers, we lost our head pastor, and he had to leave. He had to take care. Okay. I don't know what that was, but we're just going to persevere. If you were on my home channel last night, then you know that we were having some technical difficulties over there. So I don't know, but we're just going to have to keep pushing forward. Okay. Anyways, so please keep my church in your prayers because our lead pastor had to abruptly leave to take care of his father who lives in another state. And I think that that's great. You know, I think that's the way it should be because it's not the government's responsibility to take care of you. It's your children's responsibility. So I'm glad that he did that. And I think that, you know, that was a justifiable reason. However, we don't have a pastor. But we do have a fill-in pastor who's been here for about a month. And this idea is thanks to him. We were talking, I can't remember now, I think it's Wednesday nights. We're talking about like different characters in the New Testament. And he got on the person of Barnabas. And he was saying how great Barnabas was and how much he helped Paul kind of jumpstart his ministry. And I was like, you know what? You know, Barnabas was a really good, you know, second fiddle. You know, he was a really good helper. And so that's what conceived this idea of, you know, let me look at other great helpers and second fiddles throughout history and, you know, throughout the Bible is what I really mean. That, you know, helped someone who, you know, was great and played their role and just, you know, did what they were supposed to do. And their contribution was invaluable. And because, you know, over here, I talk about relationship and I talk about the role of wives. And so, you know, we live in a society that is very, very prideful, very narcissistic, very self-involved. And so everybody's looking out for number one. You know, everybody wants to be the main character. Everybody wants to be the star of the show. When in reality, there is so much joy and so much satisfaction and fulfillment in just playing your proper role. And if that happens to be in the front, then God bless it. But most of us will be second fiddles, you know, if not just background characters, because everybody can't be the main character just inherently. And if you are a wife, then you are the second fiddle in your home, okay? Your husband is the main character. Your husband is the star of the show. Physically speaking, of course, you know, Jesus should be the real head of the show. But physically speaking, you are to be under your husband. You are to submit to him. And people think that, you know, submission is a dirty word and that, you know, you're squandering the potential of women by telling them that they need to be under their husband. You know, she can be just as good and she can be right there with him and when we're equals and all this stuff. Friend, you can't have a car with two steering wheels. It's going to crash. Okay. And so I think that a husband should take his wife's opinion into consideration. I think that if a man is wise, that he would marry a woman whose opinion and thought process he values, okay? So that way he can take her advice on certain things and she can help him make decisions. But at the end of the day, what he says goes. And if you can agree with it, if you can understand where he's coming from, then that's the best of the scenarios. But even if you don't agree and you don't understand, you need to still subject yourself because he is your God-given authority. Because, well, I mean, you chose him. So, I mean, really, you chose your own authority. So who are you to start disobeying him? But, in the nature of the home, being that you chose for him to be your husband, now that you have made that decision, that is God told you to obey him. And whether or not you like whatever he's doing, that is secondary, okay? Unless he's telling you to sin, okay? Obviously, you have to put that little asterisk in there. If your husband's telling you to sin, if he's telling you to go against God, then that's not right. You don't have to listen to that. But most husbands don't do that. So, okay. I feel like I'm talking to intelligent people, so I don't need to always do a whole lot of prefacing, but just for anybody who might be just passing through the stream. And so I have a few examples of some second fiddles that I wanted to give you guys some encouragement, to give us wives some kind of perspective on how us being the helpmeet to our husband, us being the background, we're just we're playing our part behind the scenes. That is very honorable, and that is a blessed thing to do. And we shouldn't feel discouraged in that position. We shouldn't feel like that we're belittling ourselves or that we are squandering ourselves in that position, because for one, that's where we're supposed to be. Okay, so that is us filling our highest potential, is by us doing what we're supposed to do, doing what God told us to do. There is no greater calling for your life than what God told you to do. And so if God wants you to be a pastor, if you're a man, that is, okay, then that is what you need to do. And if God called you to be a janitor, then that's what you need to do. And if you try to excel past that, then it won't be an excel, it'll be a regression, because that's not where God wants you. Okay. So saying all that to say, we're going to jump right into our list here. And we're going to be starting off with Elisha. Okay. And so we have Lost in Translation in the back. And if you could pull up my other tab for me, that would be terrific. And so Elisha, okay, he is in the Old Testament, and he was the second fiddle or the helper of Elijah. Okay, so for anyone who's not really acquainted with the story, Elijah, he was a prophet. He did, many wonderful things for God, and he was very influential. And then towards the end of his ministry, he had his highest highest moment, I guess you could say, where he embarrasses the prophets of Baal and shows them how ridiculous they are by doing this kind of show of power, where they are supposed to offer up sacrifices to their God and see what happens and see if God answers. And then he's going to offer up a sacrifice to the one true God and then see if God answers. And of course, the Baal worshippers, they fail. Nothing happens. They're hooting and hollering and cutting themselves all day. And Elijah starts to mock them. And it's just a nothing endeavor. But before Elijah can even finish his prayer, God is already raining down fire to the offering that he gives. And he also wet the altar as well. He also wet his sacrifice. And so Elisha pops up on the scene in the next chapter. I think it's the next chapter. Yeah, I think it's the next chapter. And so we get introduced to Elijah in 1 Kings 19:16. So that's where we are right now. And so we're going to read a little bit of this. And so here in verse 16, it says, "And Jehu, the son of Nimshi, shalt thou anoint to be king over Israel, and Elisha, the son of Shaphat, the Abolimah, of Abolimah, shalt thou anoint to be prophet in thy room." Okay, and so as his successor. "And it shall come to pass that when that him that escaped the sword of Hazael shall Jehu slay, and him that escaped from the sword of Jehu shall Elisha slay. Yet I have left him 7,000 in Israel, all the knees which have not bowed unto Baal, and every mouth which hath not kissed him. And so, just to take a little brief side note from this, when it comes to how, especially right now, it feels like real Christians are scarce and they're far and few between, and we kind of are. But here is God's promise that there are always going to be 7,000 prophets who have not bowed the knee to Baal. And this is, of course, not exactly, it's proverbial. And so, the devil wants us to feel isolated, but we always have true brothers and sisters in Christ. There are always other Christians. We're never actually alone. Okay, so I just wanted to bring that up for a second. Verse 19, it says, so he departed thence and found Elisha, the son of Shaphat, who was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen before him. And he with 12, and Elisha passed by him and cast his mantle upon him. And so Elisha knows what that means, that, he's about to be, that he's now been kind of anointed as the successor of Elijah. And verse 20, it says, and he left his oxen and ran after Elijah and said, let me, I pray thee, kiss my father and mother, and then I will follow thee. And he said unto him, go back again, for what have I done to thee? And then in verse 21, Elisha, it says, and he returned back from them and took a yoke of oxen and slew them and boiled their flesh with the instruments of the oxen and gave unto the people, and they did eat. Then he arose and went after Elijah and ministered unto them and ministered unto him. Okay, so what we have here in this scenario is that Elijah, he's coming to the end of his ministry, and he anoints Elisha to be his successor. And when he comes to Elisha's, he's doing his own thing. He has his own thing going on. He has his career, if you will. But once he has this anointing from Elijah, yeah, I feel like I'm going to start mixing up their names. But yeah, as of right now, I'm still on track. So when Elijah comes and anoints him, with his mantle, then, he drops everything. And he's like, oh my goodness, like, let me go say bye to my parents, and, then I'll come after you. And so what you'll notice here in verse 21 is that Elisha is pretty much burning the bridges behind him. Okay. He was plowing the yoke of oxen when Elijah met him, and he takes that yoke of oxen and he burns it and he kills the oxen and he feeds it to the people in town for his going away party. And so it's going to be really hard to go back to being an oxen plower, or a farmer, I guess, is what kind of person would do something like that. And, it's going to be really hard to go back to that career path if you burned up all your tools and killed all your animals. Okay. And so Elisha, he's exemplary. He is giving the example of, this is what I'm going to do now, and I'm not looking back, and I'm going to, stay forward, and this is my new path now. And this is a very good testimony to how we as women should be with our marriage. Okay. I was just texting a friend the other day, a girl who used to go to my church. She's in the military, so she had to move away. But I was texting her and I asked her, are there any handsome men in your life? And she said, not yet. And I was like, that's fine. Being single is a valid season of life. And, I hope that you're enjoying it. And I hope that you are walking with Christ through this season, so that when the time comes that it's going to end, that you can look back on it fondly, and you can just kind of put that season of life to bed. Because so many women and men, but, I'm talking to women tonight. So many women, they just lust after their single life again, after they've been married. And it's like, they still want to go to all the same clubs and bars. They still want to wear the same clothes. They still want to hang out with the same people. And it's like, you're not that anymore. You operated in a way of a single woman when you were a single woman, and now you're married. So therefore you should not be operating the same way. And just earlier, before the stream started, I was watching videos about, preparing for labor and preparing for having a baby. And, I was just thinking about all these little different things that I need to collect, for postpartum. That's what it was. I was thinking about postpartum. And I was like, it's just so funny how I keep watching a lot of these videos, because I've been watching lots of videos about postpartum now. I'm in my third trimester, so it's right around the corner. And so, and a lot of the videos, I'm seeing a lot of the same products. A lot of women seem to like, a few of the same products. And I'm like, okay, this is definitely something that I want. And it's just, like when you're in this sphere of, postpartum, pregnancy, labor, birth, I'm in that world right now. And it's not a world I was really in before, because I haven't had any children before. And so now that I'm in this, in this group, in this circle, it's like, I can't believe I ever went without, a disposable diapers, or I can't believe that I've been living without, nipple butter and stuff like that. It's like everybody has this stuff. And it's like, no, they only have these things because they have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 children. And so, I don't have any children, I haven't birthed any children yet. And so I don't have these things, but once I move into that season of life, these will be things that I'll have, and I'll have for a while, because, I plan on having lots of kids. And so, saying all that to say, when we enter into a new season of life, we need to turn our back on the old season. Okay. It is not appropriate for married women to still want to be, doing all the stuff that they did when they were single. And you really shouldn't have been wilding out that much when you were single anyway. You should have been still living a decent, wholesome life. But, it's not appropriate for a married woman to participate in all the same activities as a single one. It's not appropriate for a mother to participate in all the same activities as a woman who doesn't have children. You're not that same person anymore. Okay. And women always talk about like, oh, I had to leave my husband because I lost myself. I felt like I wasn't me anymore. And it's like, I just don't know who I am. You're somebody new. Like, no, you are not the same person that you were 10 or even 5 or maybe even a year ago. I have changed a lot in this last year. And so, but that's a good thing. Life moves forward, life goes on. And I'm not just going to sit around and just, continue to look back on my Facebook and my Snapchat memories and long for something that I used to be, because I'm not that anymore. And so, friend, this is a very good reminder from Elisha, that, when we enter into a new season of life, when we undertake a new phase of life, and, when we agree to get on somebody else's program, okay, because as a wife, that is what you're doing. You're agreeing that you're going to get on his program. And yeah, Elisha had his career, Elisha, he was a boss or whatever. And so, but he decided that he was going to submit himself to the authority of Elijah, and it was for his own good. Because when it comes to Elijah, when he eventually does pass away, right before that happens, Elijah asked him, what shall I give you? What do you want from me before I go? And Elisha says that he wants the double portion of his spirit. So Elisha wanted double the portion of Elijah's spirit. And Elijah says, if you watch me as I depart up into heaven, because he got sucked into heaven in a whirlwind. He didn't actually die. And so and Elijah says, if you watch me as I go up, then you'll have it, but if you don't, then you won't have it. And so he had his eyes peeled, and so he saw it. And, by the time that Elisha passes on, he had done twice as many miracles as Elijah did. And so, Elijah, he was a very humble servant. There's a story, and I can't think of the characters right now. I think it's the story where the king has leprosy, and this is when Elisha is like the leader now after Elijah has passed on, and he has his own servant that's with him. I think that's the story. I might be mixing that up, but anyway, just like there's a time when someone important, someone of a high status is calling out for Elisha, or calling out for someone who they think is important, like someone like they need help. I think it is that story. Where I think like a king has leprosy, and they're like, the king is like, who should I go to? Who's gonna be able to help me? And the servants of the king, they're like, oh, go to Elisha, he can help you. And the king is like, what's his qualification? And what are we waiting around for? Let's go get him. So it's like, the qualifiers that Elisha had were that he poured the water on the hands of Elijah. And today people would say that's not important, that's not significant, but obviously it was. He was a loyal, he was a faithful, he was a dutiful servant, and that yielded great benefit for him. And he later went on and was a great leader himself. And so, yes, friends, as women, we should want to be very good servants and very good helpmates to our husband, and that should be our goal. And when people say, what are your accolades? What are your accomplishments in life? You should say, I give my husband the best back rub, and people are gonna be like, what? Or whatever. Like, I am such a good wife. My husband, he trusts me with his whole heart. Those should be the things that we take pride in. All right. And so moving right along, we have our next person, which is Aaron. Okay. So we are going to Exodus chapter 4, verse 14. And this is where we get introduced to Aaron. Okay. And so Aaron is the brother of Moses. Okay. So Moses, pretty big deal. I would honestly say that Moses is the most famous biblical person outside of Jesus. Okay. I would say that is pretty much without a doubt, hands down. Like, if you were to do a poll of the most famous biblical icons, then Moses would have to be number one, outside of Jesus Christ. Because he's not just famous in Christianity, but he's famous in even other religions. So, but anyways, so Moses, everybody's familiar. And so the backstory of this is that Moses has been called by God to let his people go. Okay. And Moses is not really jumping on this opportunity. He's pretty skittish. He feels like he's a bad talker. He's like, I don't think I'm the right person. I think you're mistaken, God. I don't think I'm really supposed to be doing this. And so God is getting a little annoyed with Moses at this point. And so here in verse 14, it picks up and it says, and the anger of the Lord was kindled against Moses. And he said, is not Aaron the Levite thy brother? I know that he can speak well. And also, behold, he cometh forth to meet thee. And when he seeth thee, he will be glad in his heart. And so this is the first time that we get introduced to Aaron in the Bible. And then eventually Aaron does meet up with Moses, and he is happy to see him, of course. And so what happens is that Aaron ends up helping Moses to speak and to, talk to the Pharaoh when Moses is doing his whole let my people go spiel, and is in that process of having that happen. And so Aaron, he plays a very vital role in that whole endeavor, because Moses, he might have blocked his own blessing had he not had Aaron to fall back on. And of course, God knows all. So, it's not like this took God by surprise that Moses was, hesitant and not willing. But Moses, it's good that he had Aaron, his brother, to help him and to, kind of walk him through this. And they went through that together. So when they go to Pharaoh and, he talked about the plagues and he, warns him and he says, like, just let us go. And, they're negotiating and what have you. Aaron is right there by his side the whole time and helping him wherever he needs it. And sometimes, he does his own thing, Moses, that is. But, Aaron is right there beside him, and Aaron is still by his side, long after the children of Israel get released. And, he's helping him and co-piloting the children of Israel with Aaron. And Aaron, he gets special rewards and blessings for doing that. And in his lineage, they get a special blessing. I forget exactly all the details of that. But yes. And so the sons of Aaron, they're the ones who are the priests, I believe. That's right. And so, yeah, Aaron, he's blessed for being a good helper, for just being there and standing by when he was needed and doing what God needed him to do. It's not always that, it wasn't that, Aaron stood up and overtook the position of Moses and said, step aside, I'll take it from here. It was that, hey, I'm right here wherever you need me. I can fill in whatever. I want to just be the best blessing to you that I can be. And that is the attitude that wives should have. Okay. If our husband feels like he's inadequate in a certain area, and he feels like he really needs our help, then we should be there at a moment's notice to help him and give him the advice or the encouragement or the guidance that he feels like he needs, and not try to overtake that or overstep our boundaries, but just to help him. And I've said before over here that when it comes to our finances, my husband, he knows. He's like, I'm not the best with money. I've never been the best with money, and I like the way that you handle it better, so I'm going to delegate that to you, and I trust your judgment in this area better than mine, and so I'll make the money and I put it in the account, and then you pay all the bills and delegate where it needs to go. And that's great. I'm not trying to usurp my husband's authority. I'm not trying to be the head of the house. I'm just going to be the best helper that I can be, and whatever he needs from me, I want to be ready and willing to do. And so that is the attitude of Aaron, and that is the attitude that we should have. Now, when it comes to Aaron, he kind of fell off the wagon a little bit. Things were going very well until Moses goes up on Mount Sinai and hangs out with God for 40 days and 40 nights. And the children of Israel kind of get out of whack. Okay. And they're like, Moses isn't coming back. We need a new God. You make us a God out of our jewelry. And he's like, oh, okay. And just let them do whatever they want. And it's just funny. And so the children of Israel, they hand over all their gold, to Aaron. He makes them a golden calf, and they start worshiping that. And they start, they start stripping down their clothes and start dressing like hoochie mamas. And God is furious. And so Moses has to come back and wrangle everybody in. But yeah, and so and that's another kind of analogy when it comes to the home. We as wives, we should not usurp our husband's authority when he's not home. If he's away on a trip, or if he's just away at work, it's not that he has rules, and then when he leaves, the rules leave with him. It's still his house, and so the rules that he sets in place, we still need to abide. And so a lot of times there can be friction in homes because the spouses are conflicting each other, and they're undermining their authority to the children to each other. And that's a huge no-no. And so if dad said that the kids can't watch more than an hour of TV, then when he leaves for work, or if he's gone out of town, that is not the green light for you as the wife to say that the kids can watch however much TV they want. No, you need to reinforce the rule that dad set, because that's still dad's home and he's still the king of that household, whether or not he's physically there or not. Okay. So that's another, point for us wives that kind of correlates with Aaron. And so that is Aaron. And then Moses, he was such a monumental character that he actually got two helpers. And so the next helper that we will be talking about in regards to in regards to Moses, is Joshua. Okay. Everybody, hopefully everybody who was in Sunday school, knows that Joshua fought the Battle of Jericho. Okay. And the walls came tumbling down. And so here in Exodus 17:9. Oh my goodness. Exodus 17:9, we get introduced to Joshua. Okay, I'm getting text messages. It was distracting me. We get introduced to Joshua. And so here in verse 9, it says, and Moses said unto Joshua, choose us out men and go out, fight with Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand on the top of the hill with the rod of God in mine hand. And so the scenario, the context of what's going on is that this is near the end of Moses' life. And the children of Israel were supposed to go into the promised land, but they were afraid and didn't go. And so now they're left to wander in the wilderness for 40 years. And during that time, so when they were supposed to go, they sent spies into the land to check it out, see, what it was like. And one of the spies was Joshua. And he and somebody else said, oh, we can take it, we can handle it. And, it's going to be fine because God already said that we could have it. But the other spies were scared, and so they didn't go. And so Joshua showed that he is the proper leader. And so Moses kind of anointed him as, to be the successor of the children of Israel in his passing. And so at this point, they are fighting against King Amalek, who, is wicked. And so Moses says that, you are going to lead the troops into battle, and I'm going to hold up my staff. And as long as my arm is up, then you guys are going to prevail. But if I drop my arm, then you guys are going to start losing. And so Joshua, he just plays his role, and he's a very good helper to Moses, until the end, and then he becomes a successor. And when it comes to Joshua, it's very interesting because he actually is a picture of Jesus Christ. And pretty much all of the, all Old Testament prophets in one way or another are examples of Jesus Christ. And so the name, the name Joshua actually is rendered as Jesus, in the New Testament. And so it's actually said, I forget, I might get it backwards sometimes, but I think that in the New Testament, it refers to Jesus as Joshua. I want to say that's right. And so, yeah. And so not only, literally does it, translate that way, but also he's a physical symbolic picture of Jesus, because it shows that, Moses, he was the example of the children of Israel being under the law, being that he was the one who had the 10 commandments, the law. He was the one who gave the law to the children of Israel. And Joshua is a picture of being under grace. Now, I'm not a dispensationalist. I believe that, we as human beings, everyone who's ever gotten saved has been saved by grace. But it's just the fact that, we got the law for a certain reason. And then, it was explained to us, the fact that, the law was never given so that way we would abide by it and get saved. It was given to us to show us just how bad we really are and why we can't get saved on our own. And so Joshua, he symbolizes grace, and he symbolizes Jesus Christ. And so, yes, friends, Joshua, he did many wonderful works for God as well. And he is recorded in the Hall of Faith, I believe in Hebrews 11. He might not be there, but I'm pretty sure he is. And he was just a great helper, and he played his role for Moses in his latter, end and in his latter years. And so God blessed him, and he was a very good helper for Jesus. Okay. I mean, for Moses. Excuse me. So yes, that is Joshua, and he was a very good helper, a very good second fiddle, that is. And so now we're jumping into the New Testament, and we're going to go to Barnabas, like I teased earlier. And so Barnabas, he played a very impactful role in the early church, in the early days of Christianity, when it came to Paul. Okay, so far, who we've covered is we've covered Elisha, who was the helper of Elijah, Aaron, who was the helper of Moses, and Joshua, who was the helper of Moses. Okay. And so if anybody is coming in here, I see the chat, but I don't want to get too distracted. But I see you guys over there, and I appreciate you guys being here. So if anyone is coming in now, then what we're talking about tonight are people who were great helpers of people who, had a little bit more stardom, or had a little bit more, who were more famous, I guess, if you will. We're talking about those people who were the helpers of those people. And so now we're getting on to Barnabas. Okay. And so I would say that Apostle Paul, he's probably like in the top 5 most famous people from the Bible. He might be like number 4 or 5, because I think that might be like King David and Adam, the first man. I think they would probably come before him. I think more people have just heard those names as well. But of course, this is all subjective. But, Apostle Paul, very famous character. Loved in anybody who calls himself a Christian likes Apostle Paul. And so Barnabas played a very big role in him getting his ministry off the ground. And here in Acts 4:36, we get introduced to him. And it says here that, and Joseph, who by the apostles was surnamed Barnabas, which is being interpreted the son of consolation, a Levite, and of the country of Cyprus. Okay. And so what did Barnabas do? So when Saul, okay, because that was Saul's, original name. I mean, that was Paul's original name. So when Saul, meets Jesus on the road to Damascus and gets saved, he was at that time a persecutor of God's people. He was harassing God's people. He was killing them. And so when he has this, this complete change of mind and he believes on Christ, he not only changes his mind and gets saved, but he also decides to start changing his actions. And so he's told to go to, forget whose house he's told to go to. But he goes to that guy's house and he studies there and disciples there for a while. And then he gets linked up with Barnabas. And Barnabas is already, a Christian, not by that name yet, but he's already a believer. And so it's kind of the referral that Paul needs to get off the ground when it comes to his ministry. And so because a lot of people, they're familiar with Saul, they know who Saul is. Saul is infamous in that, era. But once Saul is converted, Barnabas is used as the middleman to help get Paul, now Paul, acquainted with the modern day Christians of that time. And so he kind of goes with Paul and is vouching for him and saying like, no, like he's one of us now, he's on our side, he's a good guy, give him a chance. And he's changed and all this stuff. And so that is the role that Barnabas plays, and he helps out a lot, because if Paul didn't have Barnabas, then God's plans are always going to go through. Well, anyways, I don't want to get into all that. But who knows exactly what would have happened with Paul's ministry had he not had at least a type of Barnabas-like person. Maybe not specifically Barnabas, but if he hadn't had someone who could have, vouched for him and gone along with him to get his foot in the door in a lot of these places. So Barnabas is very influential in the early start of Paul's ministry, and not even really just the early start, but he's hanging around with Paul for a while. They have some beef later on, and they have a falling out over John Mark, but eventually that's all squashed and put, water under the bridge, because Paul later talks about Barnabas and John Mark and speaks of them highly. And so they had some beef for a little bit, but that all got squashed. And so, Barnabas, he played a very influential role in the life of Paul, even though most people don't know about Barnabas. I don't even know if he would make it in, he'd probably make it in the top 100 Bible characters. But, he would probably not be in like the first 50. I don't know. Once again, I'm just talking off the top of my head. A lot of people who are Christians, they might know the name Barnabas, but they probably don't know a whole lot about him. But he played such a pivotal role in the ministry of Paul, who everybody knows. And so you as a wife, bringing it back to, being a wife, you might give your husband advice, or you might introduce your husband to certain circles, or introduce your husband to certain people, or, give your husband a leg up in a certain area. And that helps catapult him further in his career or in whatever he has going on. And people, they start to see your husband, and he starts to get, accolades and praise. And he becomes, a big character, for whatever reason in his field. And people never know that you were the one that helped him get to that position. And, and it's not, I'm going to get, my shout out one day. And, at the end of the day, who are we doing it for? Who should we be doing it for? We should be doing it for God, and God sees all. And so whether or not, most Christians ever learn about Barnabas and the contribution that he gave to Paul is irrelevant, because God saw it. And you better believe that Barnabas got lots of rewards in heaven for all the souls that he helped save and the contribution that he played. And so, yes, friend, a lot of the times we as wives, we are going to maybe help our husband or give him an idea that, is $1 million idea, or that, really helps him move into the right direction. And we might not get the earthly credit for it that we feel like we might deserve, but that's okay. Feeling like we deserve, credit for certain things over on this side of heaven, that's just pride. And so as long as we are doing our part and we're helping our husband, which is what we should want to do, whether or not we get the man's praise for it or not is irrelevant. At the end of the day, we should just desire to help our husband as much as we can, because we're a team, and him succeeding is you succeeding. So that should be the heart that we have as wives, have a heart like Barnabas, to just want to play our role and do our best and be good helpers. And lastly on our list, I couldn't forget this guy, John the Baptist. Okay. Had to talk about the helper of Jesus. Now, of course, Jesus had his 12 disciples who were his closest buddies. And they all helped him out in one way or another. But I would definitely say that John the Baptist played a special role in helping Jesus. So let's get right here. Hold on. Am I in the right spot? Oh, there we go. So right out of the gate, we are in Matthew chapter 3, verse 1. And it says, in those days came John the Baptist preaching in the wilderness of Judea. Okay. And so brief overview of John the Baptist. So not only was John the Baptist a helper of Jesus, he was actually Jesus's cousin, because John's mother and Jesus's mother were related. They were cousins. And so Jesus and John the Baptist were like second cousins. And so he was, that was his family, just like the relationship between Moses and Aaron. And so that's, a special connection. And so when it comes to John, what was his whole claim to fame? What was the whole point? Like, what was the entire, reason that John the Baptist even came into existence? It was to proclaim the way of the Lamb. It was to make way, for the Lamb of God. And so John the Baptist, he's a pretty big character in his own right. But the only reason he's a big character is because he did such a good job of, making the way for Jesus. And so John, being that he is the helper, one of the main helpers of Jesus Christ, he actually gets teased in Isaiah 40, verse 3. And let me pull that up. I don't want to leave where we are. Well, I guess we can. So I'll just go back to this one. I don't need to open a separate tab. So jumping over to Isaiah 40, verse 3. Oop, that's wrong. Let's see here. Okay. It says here that in Isaiah 40, verse 3, that the voice of him that crieth in the wilderness, prepare ye the way of the Lord, make straight in the desert a highway for our God. Okay. And so it is prophesied that there would come a one who would prepare the way of the Lord. That there would come a one who would like pave the way and kind of set the stage, if you will, for the Messiah. And so also a side note, when people on my show yesterday, I was talking about things that are kind of clear in the Bible. And I was saying how the deity of Christ is the second clearest doctrine in the whole Bible, second only to the ease of salvation. And here's just another proof text for how Jesus is God, and how anybody who's honest would know that Jesus is God, because it like jumps off the page at you. It's like, it's everywhere. It's in the Old and New Testament. Here, perfect example, Isaiah 40, verse 3, it says that the voice of him that crieth in the wilderness, prepare you the way of the Lord, make straight in the desert a highway for our God. And then in the New Testament, it says that John the Baptist is the one who prepared the way of the Lord. And so it's talking about Jesus. And so if this verse is a parallel verse for the one in the New Testament that talks about where John the Baptist is the one speaking, and he says, prepare you the way of the Lord, then who is the Lord? Oh, that's Jesus. Oh, well, this verse is saying that it's comparing Lord with God, so Jesus is God. Anyways, there's that. So, just another verse in your toolbox for talking to someone who tries to deny the deity of Christ, which is just so blatantly obvious. But anyways, And so that was the role of John the Baptist. And so um, he was just he came on the picture just to prepare people for Christ, to baptize them, once they got saved, because of course baptism has nothing to do with salvation. They do not go hand in hand inherently, that is. And so, Jesus, he preached, and the disciples preached, and they got people saved. And then they would go to people like John the Baptist and get baptized. Um, and so he was just, what is it? I'm trying to think of what Lost in Translation said right before the show started. He said that he is going to be my point guard for tonight's show, and that means that he's just going to be helping me. And so really, John the Baptist was playing point guard for Jesus, and Jesus is the shooting guard. I think that's right. I think I'm using my sports analogy right. And so, yeah, John, he just, took, the converts that were given to him, and he had his own converts and he had his own disciples. But, he just played a very assisting role in the ministry of Jesus. And when he goes to jail for rebuking the king at the time, he starts to doubt and he starts to waver. But he believes, and his faith is regained when he sends a message out to Jesus, and Jesus responds back to him. And so we can get weary in our well-doing as wives, and we can lose faith in our husband. But we should be able to be consoled and comforted and brought back to reality, brought back to a place where we can objectively say, like, okay, this is right, and I know what I'm doing is right, and I'm not going to let fear and doubt creep in, because doubt is understandable, especially when it comes to our husband, because unlike Jesus, our husbands are flawed. And so there's much more understandable room for doubting him and the decisions that he's making, and is he really doing what he's supposed to be doing. And so God understands that. But the same way that John started to doubt when he was in prison. But at the end of the day, we should stand fast on our decisions and hold to our decisions, and be true to what we said that we were going to do, which is stay married to this man. And John, he eventually gets killed for the cause of Christ. But once you're saved, you're always saved, and so he didn't lose his salvation or anything. But I do believe that he probably got his faith back up, and was on fire once again. And so, yes, friends, I would say that when it comes to John the Baptist, that he was probably one of the most influential, one of the most beneficial helpmeets that there are, that there ever were. Because Jesus said that there is none greater born of woman than of John the Baptist. And so, he got very high praise and very high accommodations, here on earth. And so I can only imagine what kind of rewards that he got in heaven for the role that he played. But yes, and so, I hope that this list, that it encourages you guys, and that it reinforces, the fact of, being a helper, being a second fiddle, if you will. Oh, Jared, you can drop the link if anybody wants to come up here and add anything as well. So you can do that now. But yeah, so being a helper, being someone's second banana or whatever, it's not a demeaning role. It's not a role that is even thankless. People always want to say, like, oh, this is a thankless position. Being a stay-at-home wife, being a trad wife or whatever, it's all you do is do all this work, and you're basically a slave, and you're just doing all this domestic labor, and there's no value and all this stuff, just all these sour grapes. But I hope that these examples invigorate you and encourage you, and remind you that there are a lot of people who play background roles whose names that we might not ever know. Thankfully we have the names of these people because they're documented in the Bible, and so therefore their names are significant for all of time. But just think about the examples that we don't have. Think about the people that have helped people that we know that we will never know the name of, will never understand to fully what extent they helped. I was just telling Lost in Translation in the back that nobody is a one-man band. Nobody is a one-man show. Everybody has helpers. The president has his cabinet, okay, where he seeks guidance from and where he gets help from. And so, most people don't know the name of any of the cabinet members. Like, what? A lot of people who don't even know the name of the vice president, a lot of the time. A lot of people know who the vice president is right now, but most of the time, like throughout history, people don't know who the vice president is. But they're a helpmeet to the president. And all the people that helped Thomas Edison build the light bulb, and all the people who helped Henry Ford, all the people who helped Elon Musk, and all the different things that we enjoy, and the people, there's the figurehead that we know and has been immortalized in history. But none of these people are standalone. None of these people are independent agents. They all need helpers, and there's nothing wrong with taking a helper role in society, and especially in your home. Okay. And so, like I said at the beginning, it's not even just that it's a good role, it's the best role, because that is the role that has been ordained for you by God. And so, a woman who is so hell-bent on carving her own way and being her own person and getting out from under her husband, she thinks that foolishly, she thinks that she is, liberating herself, and that she's persevering and she's going forward. Like a perfect example of this is Joyce Meyer. Okay. So Joyce Meyer thinks that she's honoring God and that she's glorifying God by being a woman pastor. And, her husband takes the back seat. But in reality, she's doing the exact opposite. She's blaspheming the cause of Christ. She's blaspheming God, and she's doing irreparable damage to, to the view of Christianity, because she's leading so many Christian women astray by thinking that it's appropriate and right to be a woman pastor. And so honestly, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, friends. So a lot of the times we can think that we're doing something right, this is good, this is positive, but in reality, it's not. And it's actually doing a lot more harm than good. And so there's that. And so just remember that when it comes to being a wife, it's not all glitz, it's not all glamour, but it is a very important role. And it is a role that, God sees, and he is not slack, as some count slackness. And so he is gonna, repay, and he is gonna, reward us for all the things that we do. And when we are submissive and obedient to our husbands, and God will honor and glorify that. And so if there are no guests who want to come on, then I am gonna let you guys go for this evening. I apologize for missing last week. That was my original showtime. But we had my husband, his best friend, moved away, not officially, but he had to go away for a while. He'll be back for like a few weeks, and then he'll actually officially move away. But yeah, so his best friend was leaving, and so he had a cookout last week, and so we wanted to go to the cookout, and I was supposed to be back before my showtime, but that didn't happen, and I didn't want to cause an argument by saying we gotta go, I gotta do my show. So I was just like, you know what, Black men don't feel flexible. And there's going to come a time when he's not going to be able to see him really anymore. So I'll just, let him hang out at this cookout. And then last night on my home channel, I was late to my stream because we were out again with that friend because he left today. So anyways, I appreciate you guys being flexible and understanding with me, and stopping by. And for those of you who are here, please be sure to leave a like on your way out, and leave a comment, and share the video with any housewives or any wives that that might be feeling a little burnt out, feeling a little underappreciated, because that happens. Our husbands, like I said, they're not perfect, and sometimes they might take our deeds for granted, and they might not show us all the gratitude that we might deserve, and that happens, but that's okay. It does not mean that we need to start, chastising our husband and browbeating our husband. No, you need to appreciate me more, because that's not really how appreciation works. You can't really beat it out of people. And so just kind of, roll with the punches and take it in stride, and God will repay, and God will see, and God will bless. As I hope that you all have a wonderful evening, And I look forward to talking to you again in 2 weeks. Yeah, in 2 weeks with another topic. And I hope that you guys enjoyed this. And so everybody have a wonderful evening, and I'll talk to you again real soon.
It's going down like a rodeo. It's going down like I told you so. It's going down like a rodeo. It's going down like I told you so. I hope you're all here for the ride. Come inside, cause it's going down tonight. Only here for one night, no lies. Come and saddle up a ride. Need a yeehaw, you know how here for one night and we just wanna party. In a fast car, a Ferrari. It's a push start, I don't need a car key. Slide on Broadway, and it's gnarly. On a late night, but I'm not tardy. Right on time for the parties and Barbies. Strolling with a chunk of green like a dog sweet. Hey, 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 hey. Bottles on ice, mess around these skates. Hey, hey, hey. If I gotta say it twice, then I got nothing to say. It's going down like a rodeo. It's going down like I told you so. It's going down like a rodeo. It's going down like I told you so. I hope you're all here for the ride. Come inside, cause it's going down tonight. Only here for one night, no lies. Come and saddle up a ride. Come and kiss me up, it's going down. Like a train with no brakes, I'm not slowing down. See us showing up, we're showing out.